High school students vanished at party in 1989 to 9 years later. Janitor finds this under the floor. This happened in a town you probably wouldn't recognize if you passed through it, unless you grew up there or knew someone who did. St. Augustine, Illinois. Population just under 4,000 back then. One diner, one gas station, and one high school with a football team that never made it past regionals, but still drew half the town to the bleachers every Friday night. The story starts in that school. Not in a classroom, and not on a field. But in a room nobody really talked about, at least, not until a janitor working a late shift in the summer of 1998 pulled back a rotted floorboard and saw something wedged deep beneath the substructure. Torn cloth, barely recognizable as clothing. A pale blue shimmer buried in dust. And something else, the faint shape of a shoe, curled inward like someone had slipped out of it mid-step. He didn't know, at first, what he'd found. But the principal did. And so did the sheriff, when they got the call. Because 9 years earlier, almost to the day, 4 students had vanished from a party held in that very building. Not a school-sponsored dance. Not prom. Just a graduation party that was never supposed to happen. It wasn't on the books. No faculty. No chaperones. Just students with a key someone copied, a crate of warm beer, and 2 portable speakers someone's cousin wired to work off a stolen car battery. That kind of party. The kind no one admits to planning. But everyone remembers attending. Except, afterward, when the music stopped and the doors were locked and the stories started to blur, 4 people weren't where they were supposed to be. 3 boys and 1 girl. Eleanor Breyer, Carson Delaney, Jake Mays, and Lucas Finch. They were all seniors. They were all popular. Not in the fake, movie way, they weren't quarterback kings or homecoming queens. But they were known. Eleanor played clarinet in the marching band. Carson co-edited the school paper. Jake worked weekends at the auto shop and gave half the junior class their first beer. Lucas. No one ever quite figured Lucas out. He floated. Crossed clicks. Always smiling, always listening, never quite in one place long enough to pin down. They weren't a group, exactly. But they all showed up that night. And none of them made it home. The first call came in the next morning from Eleanor's mother, who thought her daughter had stayed with friends. Then Carson's dad, who found his son's bed unslept. Then Jake's younger brother, who found his car parked 3 blocks away, keys still in the ignition. Lucas's disappearance took longer to notice. His parents were out of town. It was his neighbor, a retiree named Helen, who told the police she hadn't seen him feeding the cat that morning like he always did when his folks were gone. The investigation was quiet at first. Small town quiet. Local deputies. Volunteer search teams. Flyers. Interviews. Then came the news vans, drawn more by the sheer oddity of the number than anything else. 4 kids. One night. No bodies. No leads. They didn't leave together, not as far as anyone could tell. Some people swore they saw Eleanor on the stairs. Others said Carson was helping someone carry beer into the kitchen. One person, an underclassman who never spoke on record, said she saw Jake and Lucas arguing in the hallway, but she couldn't remember what about. No one could even confirm what time the party ended. And there was no sign of struggle. No blood. No broken windows or missing cars. Nothing. Just absence. By fall, it became a local legend. The seniors who vanished. The haunted party. The school never acknowledged it officially, but the old West Wing where the party took place was sealed off for renovations. That wing never reopened. Some kids swore they heard footsteps down there late at night. One janitor claimed he saw lights through the cracks under the doors, even when the power was cut. Teachers rolled their eyes. The town moved on, at least on the surface. But the families never did. Eleanor's mother left town in 1991. Jake's brother enlisted at 17. Carson's dad started drinking heavy. Lucas's house stayed empty, windows shuttered and weeds up to the mail slot. No one ever found a trace of them. Not until that floorboard came up. It happened on a Tuesday. Early July. The school was undergoing renovations, real ones this time, and an older janitor named Harold Riggs was stripping out floor tiles in the West Wing, alone, just past 6 p.m. He noticed the creak first. Not the regular kind you get from an old building, something more deliberate. Like a board flexing with weight. Only no one was there. He got down on one knee, peeled back a warped edge, and saw what looked like fabric jammed deep between the joists. He pried it loose. It didn't tear like cloth. It cracked. Brittle. Covered in dust, like it had been baked into the floor. He pulled out more. A section of blazer sleeve. A crushed shoe. Then something else. A glittering piece of thread that caught the dying light through the filthy window. It wasn't until he stepped back and saw the shallow space beneath him, like a crawl space, but deeper, like someone had carved it out by hand, that he realized he wasn't just dealing with forgotten insulation or misplaced uniforms. This was something someone had left behind. Carefully. Secretly. He called the principal. She called the police. And when they arrived, they didn't find bodies. But they found 4 full sets of clothing, each set matching what the students were last seen wearing. As confirmed by parents, yearbook photos, and security footage from a gas station the night of the party. Eleanor's sparkly blue dress, crumpled like a paper towel. Carson's sport coat and striped tie, half buried in dust. Jake's work boots, cracked through the sole. Lucas's slacks and white shirt, the collar shredded like it had been chewed. No blood. No bones. No signs of violence. Just clothing. Arranged, some said, like someone had folded them. Others said it looked more like the clothes had collapsed inward. As if their wearers had simply vanished. The space was dry. No mold. No animal traces. No footprints. Nothing. Forensics couldn't explain the preservation. No one could. But that was only the beginning. Because the deeper they looked, the stranger it got. The local police held a press conference 3 days after the discovery. It was short. Tense. Sheriff Green stood at the podium in front of a crowd that had tripled in size overnight. Townsfolk in folding chairs, reporters with flashbulbs. 2 news vans idling across the street. He didn't say much. Confirmed that clothing had been recovered. Confirmed that it had been found under a sealed-off section of the high school. Declined to comment on its condition. Ongoing investigation, he said. No evidence of foul play. But the words felt hollow, even to those who wanted to believe them. Because people in town remembered. They remembered that Jake had been wearing those boots the last time he was seen, leaning on the hood of his car. They remembered Eleanor spinning in that dress on the gym floor, laughing. They remembered Lucas arriving late, his white shirt still wrinkled from some family dinner he'd hated. They remembered Carson helping clean up near the end, his blazer tossed over a folding chair. And now all of it was under the floor, like time had folded in on itself. The FBI got involved by the end of the week. Forensics teams. Cadaver dogs. Ground-penetrating radar. They tore up the entire West Wing floor. Panel by panel, tile by tile. But they found nothing else. The crawl space, as it was first labeled, turned out to be more than just a hollow. It extended 6 feet deep and nearly 12 across. Concrete walls on 3 sides. The 4th wall was open, but led nowhere, just a jagged cut into dirt and stone. It looked carved. Not dug. There were no tool marks. No natural erosion. No tunnels. It was like a room that had been started and abandoned. Or like something had been built over it. Forgotten. Sealed. When pressed for answers, the school's administration could provide no blueprints. No construction records showed that area as accessible. The oldest floor plans, dating back to the 60s, didn't list a substructure beneath the west wing at all. That section had been added in 1979, a decade before the disappearance, but according to archived permits, it was built directly on a poured foundation. No basement. No crawlspace. And yet there it was. What made it worse, what twisted the feeling in everyone's stomach, was that the floorboards above the discovery site had shown no sign of tampering. No nails pulled. No cut edges. No signs of someone trying to open the space from above. It was as if the floor had always been there, untouched. As if the space had waited. The sheriff's office issued a new statement. Clothing found under the floor appears consistent with apparel worn by missing students from 1989. The area is being treated as a historical crime scene. No further comment. But the town didn't wait for answers. Rumors exploded. Some said the students had been buried alive, trapped during renovations. Left to die in a space no one knew existed. Others insisted it was a prank gone wrong, a pact between friends, a setup that went too far. One woman, the sister of a retired teacher, said she remembered Eleanor crying in the bathroom the day before the party, saying she'd figured something out, but refused to say what. Still others whispered about that night. About the music cutting out halfway through. About the power flickering. About the strange thumping sound someone heard from under the bleachers. About how someone, they couldn't remember who, had screamed once, then laughed like it was a joke, and no one checked to be sure. The principal at the time, Richard Morton, was long retired. A reporter tracked him down in Colorado, living in a cabin. He refused to speak on camera, but when pressed, said only this: "We sealed that wing for a reason. And it wasn't budget cuts." The janitor who found the space, Harold Riggs, took a leave of absence a week later. He gave no reason. His nephew, who sometimes helped with summer maintenance, said Harold had become quiet. Skittish. Like he was waiting for something to happen. When asked what he thought of the discovery, the nephew shrugged. He didn't say much. But the one thing he kept repeating was, that floor was solid. I know what I walked on. That floor wasn't hollow. Meanwhile, the families, those who remained, were pulled back into a nightmare they thought had gone cold. Eleanor's mother returned to town for the first time in 8 years. She visited the school site, stood behind the police tape, and wept. Not loud. Just quietly, as if her body had already used up the big emotions long ago. Carson's dad refused interviews but released a single statement. "We always said we needed something. Anything. Closure. But I think this might be worse than not knowing." Jake's brother, now in his late 20s, offered a reward. $25,000 for information. "We never stopped looking," he said in a short news clip. "And we won't stop now. Somebody knows." Lucas's house, still abandoned, became a pilgrimage site for the curious. Local kids dared each other to break in. Some claimed they saw writing on the walls. Others swore the air inside was too cold, even in August. One girl, 17, honor student, claimed she saw light coming from the second-floor window. When pressed, she said it was blue. Flickering. Like a candle, she said. But not fire. Like a glow. No one believed her. Except her younger brother, who refused to go upstairs in their own house for a week afterward. Back at the school, renovation crews were halted. The area was sealed again, this time with concrete and steel plates, courtesy of a state order. Not forensics. Not preservation. Safety. That's what they said. But no one explained what kind of safety they meant. And then, silence. No new discoveries. No new leads. Until September 5th, 2 months after the floorboard was lifted. That's when the new janitor, a part-time hire named Will Foster, found something else. Not under the floor. Not in the west wing. But in the main hallway, taped to the inside of locker number 308. A locker that, according to school records, had been empty for 5 years. It was a photograph. Old. Faded. Slightly warped from moisture. But clear enough to see 4 people in it. Standing. Smiling. Wearing the exact same clothes they'd been reported missing in. And behind them, in the blurry background, the unmistakable shape of a wall that shouldn't exist. A concrete wall. With a single door. Painted shut. No hinges. No handle. No number. Just a faint, handwritten message, barely visible in the corner of the image. It's still open from the inside. The photograph from locker number 308 was turned over to the authorities the same day it was found. Sheriff Green didn't issue another press conference this time. He didn't need to. News of the photo spread before it even left the school office. It was printed on glossy stock, like something developed at a cheap drugstore lab back in the day. The timestamp on the back was smeared, but what little remained showed the month, June, 1989. Just days before the students vanished. What disturbed investigators most wasn't the age of the photo, or even the fact that it showed the 4 missing teens apparently alive and well. It was where the image had come from. Locker number 308 had been officially sealed since 1993. Before that, it had belonged to a girl named Susan Vickers, sophomore, average grades, no known connection to any of the missing students. She left school abruptly halfway through her junior year and never returned. Her family moved out of state. The file listed it as personal family matters. Nothing else. But when they opened the locker, the photo wasn't the only thing inside. Behind the taped image was a strip of folded yellowed paper. Lined. Torn from a spiral notebook. The ink was faded, but legible. It said, "Don't look for us. We're not where you think. But we never left." That was all. No signature. No date. Just that. The locker was swabbed. The photo analyzed. The paper tested. No prints. No DNA. Nothing but dust and oxidation. Like it had been there for years, or days. The labs couldn't agree. Some claimed the photo was too well preserved. Others said the fading suggested natural age. One lab technician, off record, said the edges of the paper looked like they had been burned, but only slightly, as if heat had come from inside the locker and not from an outside source. Theories multiplied. One claimed the kids had staged their own disappearance, that the clothes were planted, the note fabricated, and the photo part of a game. A sick hoax. But that theory collapsed under the simplest scrutiny. The clothing showed signs of long-term age and exposure to materials not present in the school. Dust compounds consistent with subsoil limestone. Microscopic fungal growth not native to the region. Pollen traces from plant species that hadn't existed in Illinois since the early 1900s. Another theory suggested a breakdown in space, a localized structural anomaly that created a void beneath the school. A sinkhole, maybe. Or some kind of geological pocket. But the crawlspace had clean-cut walls. Flat. Angled. Purposeful. No one could explain it. Sheriff Green went silent. Interviews were declined. Reports delayed. The school board issued an internal memo stating that any further speculation about the West Wing or related artifacts is discouraged for the emotional well-being of the student body. But people kept talking. Especially after something else happened. October 2nd. Roughly 3 weeks after the photo surfaced. A group of seniors, 6 of them, all friends, decided to sneak into the West Wing. Not through the main hall, which had been locked down since the discovery, but through the old boiler tunnel beneath the building. The tunnel had been sealed since the late 80s after a small fire, but remnants remained. A narrow concrete shaft that once ran steam pipes from the generator to the north section of the school. Forgotten by most. Not by everyone. They broke in just after 11 p.m. Phone flashlights. A bolt cutter. Two of them live-streamed part of it, but the signal cut out once they were inside the old wing. That footage was later recovered from a cloud backup. It didn't show much. Just darkness. Dust. The beam of a flashlight crossing old lockers, walls warped with heat damage, graffiti from decades of kids daring each other to go deeper. And then, silence. The 6 students were found the next morning in the faculty lounge of the main building. Curled up on couches. Blank stares. Unresponsive. All 6 were physically unharmed. No wounds. No signs of assault. But none of them spoke. Not that day. Not the next. It took over a week before the first student, a girl named Kira, said anything at all. She said, "It wasn't a room." When asked what she meant, she stared straight ahead and whispered. It was like the space didn't want to be found. Like it forgot how to be real. The others gave similar statements over the following days. All vague. Disjointed. They described walking down a hallway that seemed too long. Turning left even though there was no intersection. Seeing doors that weren't doors. One student said he saw a mirror that didn't show their reflections, only a flickering blue hallway, empty and moving like water. They all mentioned sound. A low humming. Like wires in the wall. Like breathing. But there were no wires. No machines. And no signs anyone had accessed the West Wing since it was sealed. School was shut down temporarily. Official story: mold contamination. Cleanup crews worked day and night. But rumors spread that they weren't cleaners at all, that some wore radiation suits. That vans came at 3 a.m. and left before sunrise. That someone in a dark sedan was parked outside the school every night for a month. By Halloween, the building reopened. But the West Wing was walled off. Not just locked. Bricked. Cemented. Gone. And yet, students said they still heard footsteps from behind the wall. Faint at first. Then louder. Always the same rhythm, 4 steps. A pause. Then 4 again. Others reported dreams. Of music playing. Of clothes folded on chairs. Of Eleanor, standing at the top of the old staircase, holding something in her hand. A key. And the phrase that began to circulate through whispers and scrawled notes on desks, bathroom stalls, and library books. It's still open from the inside. After Halloween, things in St. Augustine started to shift. Not publicly. Not loudly. But beneath the surface, in conversations that stopped when others walked in. In glances exchanged between teachers, in whispers shared behind the bleachers. People stopped talking about the 4 missing students like they were gone. They started talking like they were waiting. The sheriff's office, under increasing pressure from families and the state, opened a secondary inquiry, not into the original disappearance, but into how the photograph and note appeared in the locker. A task force was formed. Digital forensics. Physical analysis. Handwriting comparison. But all roads led nowhere. The handwriting on the note bore a 68% match to Eleanor's class notebooks, inconclusive. The ink tested as ballpoint, no longer manufactured. The locker had no fingerprints except those of the janitor who found the photo. Then came the tape. On November 14th, a school counselor named Tara Haley turned in a VHS cassette found in her office mail slot. No envelope. No markings. Just a strip of masking tape across the spine that read, "Play me. 9:41 p.m. The tape was degraded. The static made large sections unusable. But the recovered segments showed footage from the old gym, the one where the party took place. The camera was stationary. Probably mounted on a tripod or balanced on a shelf. The angle looked down across the dance floor. Grainy. Slightly off-center. Time code, June 2, 1989. 9:41 p.m. At first, nothing. Then flickering lights. A slow pan of shadows across the far wall. Music distorting, the same kind that had supposedly cut out mid-party. Then a figure entered the frame. Blurred. Possibly male. Walked halfway across the gym floor, turned, and stared at the camera. No face visible. Only movement. Then 3 more figures. One by one. They moved slowly, but not like they were walking. More like gliding. Stiff. Synchronized. And then, all 4 of them stopped, side by side, facing the camera. Still. Silent. And for exactly 7 seconds, the image sharpened just enough. Eleanor. Carson. Jake. Lucas. Same clothes. Same postures. But their faces slightly wrong. As if their expressions had been drawn from memory and sketched in shadow. After that, the tape cut to static. But in the last 2 seconds of the footage, right before full black, a line of white text blinked into the bottom of the screen. They're only gone if you stop listening. No one claimed the tape. No one admitted to filming it. It didn't match any known camera angle from the school's security archive, and the original master system had been dismantled in 1992. Worse, the gym in the footage no longer existed. The wall in the background had been removed during a remodel in I-91. But the footage showed it as it had been before the change, and in one corner, just barely visible near the ceiling, was a line of writing sprayed in orange marker. Turn the sound off. It hears you. When the media caught wind of the tape, the story took off again. National headlines. Paranormal speculation. The Vanishing Four. That's what the news stations called them. Reporters flooded the town. The sheriff stopped taking questions altogether. The school suspended classes indefinitely. But the students didn't stop talking. One girl, Junior, quiet, known for painting murals in the art room, began sketching a doorway on her locker. She added to it each day. First the outline. Then the hinges. Then the knob. By December, the image spanned 3 lockers wide. No one knew how she got the time or the permission. When asked why she was doing it, she answered, "Because they left it here. They said it's still open." She didn't know who they were. 3 days later, the mural was painted over by staff. The next morning, it was back. No paint. Just a new sketch, done in charcoal this time. More detailed. The same door. The same cracks in the concrete. And now, above it, a number scrawled faintly. 1989. The girl didn't return to school after winter break. Her parents said she stopped sleeping. Said she kept her door locked at night and covered all the vents in her room with duct tape. When asked why, she whispered, "You can hear them through the air." Meanwhile, across town, the janitor, Harold Riggs, the one who first found the clothes, was seen sitting on a bench outside the shuttered school for 3 nights in a row. Just sitting. Watching the windows. A teacher passing by asked what he was doing. He said, "They're going to come back through the floor." She laughed nervously. Thought he was joking. He didn't smile. And then, on January 17, 1999, exactly 9 years and 7 months to the day since the disappearance, the school alarm triggered at 3:17 a.m. No forced entry. No broken locks. But when the security company reviewed the footage, they found something strange. All the cameras had cut out for 4 minutes. Exactly. And when they returned, locker number 308, the one that had been sealed again after the photograph, stood open. Empty. Except for one item. A cassette player. Still running. Looping a tape with no label. The only audio? 4 voices. Barely audible. Distorted. But clear enough to make out 4 words, repeated endlessly. "We didn't leave. You did." The cassette was taken into evidence by local authorities, but a copy of the audio somehow leaked online. Within a week, it was shared in dozens of forums. Some said the voices were faked, too distorted, too scripted. Others said they recognized them. A former teacher claimed it was definitely Eleanor's voice at the start of the loop. Another swore the rasp on the third line matched Lucas's speech impediment, something he'd had since childhood. Several classmates said Jake had a specific way of pausing mid-sentence, a rhythm, and it was in the tape. No one could agree, but everyone could feel something was off. The loop repeated every 27 seconds. 4 voices. No background noise. No music. Just static bookends and those words. We didn't leave. You did. The tape was analyzed by 2 private labs. One said the cassette model wasn't manufactured until 1992, 3 years after the students vanished. The other claimed the audio had minor inconsistencies, like microsplices, that indicated it had been looped manually. But the splice points didn't match analog tape technology. There was no visible cut. No physical damage. Just a loop, playing a sentence from people who weren't supposed to exist anymore. And then something even stranger happened. A former classmate of the missing 4, a boy named Mark Covell, came forward. Quietly. Anonymously at first. He sent an email to a local podcaster covering the case. Then, eventually, agreed to meet a reporter off the record. Mark said something happened the night of the party. Something no one had talked about because no one wanted to believe it had anything to do with the disappearance. He remembered Carson, Jake, Eleanor, and Lucas leaving the gym briefly. Said they were laughing about something they said they found in the storage room under the bleachers. He remembered Eleanor showing him a key. A small, rusted key on a string. She told him, "We're going to check the basement. Don't tell anyone." He thought she was joking. There was no basement under the gym. That part of the school had been built flat, no levels. But they never came back. He never told anyone, not even when they vanished, because, as he put it, the idea that they opened something that wasn't supposed to exist? That maybe they didn't just leave the building but went somewhere else? I thought I was going insane. But the mention of the key triggered something. Because in 1992, a local contractor doing repairs in the school's electrical room had reported a small, rusted key found in a junction box. No one documented it. It wasn't in the work logs. But he'd mentioned it offhand to his apprentice. That key, or one identical to it, was recovered from a student's backpack 2 weeks after Mark came forward. The student, a freshman, said he'd found it taped under his desk. Said he thought it was part of some ARG. But when asked to show where, he couldn't find the tape marks. The underside of the desk was clean. Too clean. As if it had been replaced. The key matched the description Mark had given. Tiny. Bronze. Flat teeth. The string was still looped through the eyelet, frayed at one end, like it had been pulled free. The question became, what did it open? Rumors began to spiral again. Some said the basement was real, a hidden floor. Not on the blueprints. Others said the West Wing wasn't just sealed because of what was found there, but because of where it led. And still others pointed back to the tape. The photo. The note. Because they all contained references, subtle ones, to doors. Folded clothes on the other side. Paint sealed from within. Sketches of doorknobs, hinges. Every symbol led to one word, over and over. Return. By spring of 1999, strange occurrences began to cluster. Lockers opening on their own. Students claiming they saw lights flicker in patterns, always groups of 4. A janitor found shoe prints made of dust across the floor of the old faculty room, prints that didn't match any recent shoes. One print was smaller. Eleanor's size. Another had the flat, heavy tread of Jake's boots. They called in specialists. Paranormal teams. Private investigators. One team set up motion-triggered cameras around the West Wing seal. They ran them for 12 nights. On the 12th night, all 4 cameras cut out between 2:17 and 2:22 a.m. When the footage was reviewed, one camera, just one, had 5 frames of recorded data before going dark. In those 5 frames, they saw movement. A shape at the edge of the wall. The suggestion of a hand. A sleeve. A face. No one could confirm who it was. But on the wall, beneath a crack in the paint, someone had written again. "We hear you now." The wall was scrubbed the next morning. But that night, it came back. Written in ash. By late March 1999, the town of St. Augustine was fraying at the edges. Not publicly. There were no riots, no protests. But anyone who had lived there long enough could feel it, in the way people locked their doors a little earlier, in how the local diner started closing at 7 instead of 9, in the way neighbors stopped asking questions they used to ask without hesitation. The janitor, Harold Riggs, still hadn't returned to work. Rumor had it he'd moved out of town, but nobody could confirm where. His nephew, who'd helped him occasionally with the school's maintenance years back, was spotted packing boxes into a rented truck one morning. When asked where he was going, he just said, "Uncle Harold says something's coming back. I'm not waiting to see if it's true." Around the same time, something else surfaced, this time from a completely different source. A woman named Connie Mallory contacted the sheriff's department through her lawyer. She was a former administrative assistant at the school. Now retired, living alone outside Joliet. She claimed that back in 1988, nearly a year before the disappearance, she had been instructed to catalog a shipment of surplus furniture for the district, a routine task. Included in that shipment, she said, were 4 items that had no clear inventory tags. 2 student desks. 1 metal locker. And a door. Not a normal classroom door. A heavy one. Reinforced. Faintly stained along the bottom. She remembered it because it didn't match anything else in the shipment or in the entire building. It was old. Industrial. And it smelled like rust and mildew. The custodial staff placed it in the basement storage, near the old boiler tunnel. She never saw it again. But she remembered one thing clearly, stamped on the inside of the metal frame, upside down, were 4 digits. 1989. At the time, she thought it was a manufacturing date. Now she wasn't sure. When asked why she'd never come forward sooner, she said simply, "Because back then, you didn't question what didn't make sense. You just signed off and went home." The sheriff made no public comment. But quietly, within a week, a forensic team returned to the school. They removed the concrete seal from the boiler tunnel, the one bricked off after the fire. Workers reported strange airflow, pockets of cold. And deeper inside, near the old generator room, they found remnants of furniture. Melted desk legs. A warped locker hinge. And resting on its side, half buried under insulation debris, a door frame. The door was gone. Only the imprint remained. But what disturbed them more was what was behind the frame, a narrow, straight corridor no longer than 12 feet, ending in a blank concrete wall. On that wall, someone had scrawled a message in white chalk. Not large. Not even legible at first glance. But when photographed and digitally enhanced, the words became visible. "You're asking the wrong question." Spring faded into early summer. The school remained closed. But not sealed. The board had authorized select visits from researchers, university partnerships, even a few documentary crews. Most found nothing. Some claimed to feel strange sensations, pressure changes, nausea, flashes of memory they couldn't place. And then there was the tape. A third one. This time not a VHS, but an old cassette again. Found in a donation box behind the public library. The box was full of used books, puzzles, a broken umbrella. No note. But inside a copy of The Outsiders, page 198, was another cassette. Same model as the last one. Same faint handwriting. Play at dusk. This one was different. It wasn't a loop. It wasn't a chant. It was a conversation. 4 voices, low and distant, as if recorded through a vent. They spoke slowly, almost carefully, like trying to keep still as they talked. One voice, likely Jake's, says, "They're close again. The time isn't the same. I think we looped." Another, maybe Eleanor. "We left a trail. The dust. The clothes. They'll find it." Lucas. "What if it's not enough?" Then silence. Then Carson, faint but clearer. "Then we wait until it is." The tape ends with static. But for less than a second, a breath, there's a sound in the background, nearly missed even at full volume. A door creaking open. And something heavy being dragged. The town began pulling inward again. Parents started pulling their kids from the school district. Attendance dropped. Stores cut hours. Churches saw their congregations halve in size. A local youth pastor, one of the few who remained vocal, held a sermon in June titled "When Absence Lingers." He urged families to speak their loved ones' names, to bring photos, to remind the world that 4 souls don't vanish. They echo. That Sunday, someone left 4 candles on the school steps. They burned for exactly 1 hour before the wind took them. In July, construction resumed on the east wing. A completely different part of the building, untouched by all the previous events. On July 29th, a backhoe operator struck something under the ground, not stone. Not pipe. It made a hollow sound. They uncovered a wooden panel. Beneath that, cement. Then a hatch. Locked from the inside. When they forced it open, they found a narrow shaft descending into dirt. 6 feet wide. 10 feet down. And at the bottom, in perfect alignment, were 4 footprints in the dust. One of them, unmistakably, was a boot tread. Jake's size. Facing up. As if whoever stood there had been waiting for the hatch to open. The hatch was resealed within 24 hours. Not by the sheriff's department and not by the school. By men in unmarked vans. They wore no uniforms. No agency insignias. But their equipment was pristine. Industrial-grade sensors. Tripod rigs. Something that looked like an old radio telescope, turned inward, aimed not at the sky, but at the shaft. They didn't say who sent them. No press release. Just a notice quietly tacked to the school's main entrance that read, "Ground maintenance underway. East wing access restricted until further notice." But the town wasn't buying it anymore. Not after the footprints. Not after the audio tapes. And certainly not after the 4th tape. It didn't arrive in the mail. It didn't come from a locker or a donation bin. It came from the janitor. Harold Riggs. He left it on the desk of Principal Salgado at 4:47 a.m. on August 2nd. No envelope. Just the tape, and a note scribbled in frantic, almost trembling handwriting. If you listen, you'll know they're not gone. If you don't, then you already forgot them like they said you would. The tape was different from the others. Longer. Nearly an hour. Most of it was static. But in the middle, for about 6 minutes, was something else. Sound. Movement. A low scraping, like metal against concrete. Breathing. Footsteps. And then, a soft voice, right up against the microphone. "There's a room they can't close." Another voice. "It's between the floors." Then silence. Then a sudden clatter. Wood snapping, something falling, and a voice shouting, "Get back. It's." The rest was garbled. But just before the tape ends, there's a low mechanical hum, not electrical, not industrial. Rhythmic. Almost. Alive. And then, barely above the static. "They're not waiting anymore." That phrase became a trigger. Because over the next 3 weeks, students and staff across town began reporting the same thing. Not visions. Not ghosts. Just a presence. A shift in temperature. A vibration in the floorboards, like something pacing below. One teacher claimed she heard her name whispered through the intercom system during a fire drill. No one else was in the office. A sophomore said the hallway lights flickered in sync with his footsteps, even when no one else walked with him. Another student found an old detention slip folded into her backpack, dated 1989, with her name handwritten on it. She wasn't born until 1983. And then came the map. A group of seniors in the school's AV club started comparing blueprints. Not the official ones, the ones found in yearbooks, back pages of safety manuals, outdated district newsletters. And they noticed something. There were inconsistencies. A hallway labeled Access C in 1988 didn't exist in the 1991 floor plan. A stairwell drawn in a 1985 emergency exit map led to nowhere in the 1993 inspection documents. And in one old janitorial checklist from March 1989, the page listed a room that didn't exist on any other records. Room B119. The note beside it said, "Check vent airflow. Faint noise last night. Sounds like voices." That was the last record before the party. Before they disappeared. Late August. Just before the start of the new school year. The town had quieted again. Not calmed, just tired. Like everyone had run out of questions, and no one trusted the answers. And then, once again, the floor gave way. This time in the library. A janitor, not Harold, a temp hired midsummer, was replacing tiles behind the east shelving wall when his scraper slipped. He tried to pry up what he thought was warped wood, but the panel collapsed beneath him. He fell into a crawl space. Not deep, 4 feet at most. But the space ran long. And inside, buried beneath layers of insulation and forgotten wiring, was another set of clothes. Folded. Stacked in a neat pile. Each set matching what the 4 students had been wearing the night of the party. But these clothes were different from the first set found under the dance floor. These were clean. Not dusty. Not torn. No signs of decay. As if they'd just been worn. And on top of the pile, centered precisely, was a Polaroid photograph. Undated. No caption. Just the 4 of them, Eleanor, Jake, Carson, and Lucas, standing inside what looked like a concrete hallway, all facing the camera. They were older. Not teenagers. Not kids. They looked 25, maybe 26. As if they'd grown up somewhere else. Somewhere they were never supposed to be. But the real terror was what was behind them in the photo. A wall covered in writing. Handwritten. Scrawled over and over in different sizes and thicknesses. The same sentence repeated. "This is still happening." The Polaroid found in the crawlspace shook the town more than anything before it. Because it wasn't just proof that the students might still be alive. It was proof that they'd been watching. Someone, or something, had taken that photo. Recently. It wasn't aged like the original clothes under the floorboards. No yellowing. No moisture warping. It was crisp. Clean. The kind of clarity you don't get from something buried in insulation. And worse, when the photo was tested for prints. The lab found 4 sets. But none of them matched any known records. Not the students. Not local law enforcement. Not even Riggs, the janitor. 4 full sets of fingerprints, belonging to people who, as far as official records showed, never existed. Still, the investigators kept digging. One analyst, private hire, paid under the table by a retired deputy who never stopped working the case, began cross-referencing every public document ever filed at St. Augustine High from 1985 through 1990. Attendance logs. Detention slips. PTA newsletters. What he found was something small. But it shifted everything. In a May 1989 field trip roster to the Illinois Science Museum, there were 37 students listed. But the actual bus manifest from the charter company showed 38 seats occupied. Only 37 names. One student, present but unaccounted for. On that same day, a second bus was used to pick up kids from a different school event, a basketball tournament out of town. That driver's log showed something strange. At exactly 3:09 p.m., the driver wrote, "Saw one of ours standing near the woods by the back lot. Waved. She didn't wave back. Wasn't supposed to be there. No name. No follow-up. But the handwriting on that log was a match to the same script found on the back of the photograph." This is still happening. It wasn't just notes or whispers anymore. The timeline itself was fraying. And then, September 3, 1999. 10 years and 3 months since the disappearance. The town lost power. Just for 17 minutes. No weather issues. No mechanical failures. The power company couldn't explain it. Their internal logs showed service interruption, but gave no cause code. But what mattered wasn't the outage. It was what came back online. When electricity returned, every hallway speaker in the high school, every intercom, every announcement horn, even the old ones disconnected years ago, turned on simultaneously. And played a sound. 4 voices. Singing. The same 8-second clip. A melody. Soft. Repetitive. Something like a lullaby. It wasn't recognizable. Not from any known school anthem or national tune. But students and staff reported feeling suddenly nauseous. Some described it like vertigo. One teacher collapsed. And when the audio cut out, the silence was deafening. Like the building was holding its breath. A full sweep was done. Wiring, intact. Sound system, offline. Source, unknown. And in the main office, behind the receptionist desk, taped to the back of the fire exit map, someone found a small, curled note. Folded once. Inside, typed on a strip of printer paper. "You've almost found the wrong thing." That fall, fewer than 40% of the town's students returned for the school year. Most parents withdrew their children entirely. Some families moved without announcement. Houses sat abandoned, with toys still in the yards and groceries still in fridges. No for sale signs. Just gone. The town newspaper stopped publishing a print edition. The sheriff took early retirement. And the school district quietly applied for federal funding to demolish the entire structure. But before anything could be approved, something else emerged. It came from Eleanor's mother. She contacted a reporter, not a local one, but a writer who had been following the story from a distance for years. Someone quiet. Methodical. A woman who'd published several pieces online under a pseudonym. Eleanor's mother gave her access to a locked box she'd kept in her attic since 1992. Inside was a journal. Eleanor's. Its last dated entry was from the morning of the party. She wrote, "Jake says the storage room is older than the school. He thinks there's something behind the back wall, said he heard water. But the floor doesn't feel right. When I stand in the corner, I swear I hear my own voice from behind it. Not an echo. Me, but slower. And this. I had a dream last night. I was walking through the gym, but it wasn't a gym. The floor was glass, and under it were 4 shadows. They moved when I didn't. And when I asked them where they were going, they all pointed at me." The last line of the journal, hastily scribbled in the margin, read, "It's not about where we are. It's about where we still are." No one could explain it. But the journalist published the full excerpt. And it went viral. Paranormal communities swarmed. Podcasters dissected every line. Linguists analyzed the phrasing. Some even built floor plans based on the diary. But no one got close. Because 2 weeks later, the school burned. No explosion. No alarms. Just flames. Sudden, massive, all-consuming. The fire department said it looked like it started from beneath the foundation, from inside the sealed areas, from rooms that no longer had wiring. The West Wing collapsed in under 14 minutes. No injuries. The building had been empty. But afterward, when sifting through the wreckage, one firefighter, a volunteer named Dean Harris, found something that shouldn't have survived. A tile. Perfectly intact. It had been part of the old library floor. On the underside, written in black marker, was a line of text. "We left everything you need. But you have to stop asking where we went." After the fire, the town changed. Not quickly. Not loudly. But something about the way people moved, the silence in the supermarket, the way cars no longer lingered at stop signs near the old school grounds, it told you that whatever had been buried wasn't anymore. The ruins were fenced off within a week. State inspectors arrived, issued structural hazard notices, and promised cleanup pending environmental review. But nothing happened. The blackened debris stayed. Warped girders. Shattered concrete. Pieces of chalkboards fused with floor tiles. And under it all, the ground felt different. Like it was hollow again. 1 month after the fire, a maintenance worker for the town's utilities department, a man named Paul Weller, went missing. His truck was found parked near the north fence line of the ruins. Engine off. Keys still in the ignition. His clipboard on the seat. In the bed of the truck was a small core drill, the kind used to test soil compaction. The drill bit was still buried in the dirt, roughly 3 inches down. When they removed it, the soil came out in a perfect cylinder. At the center of the sample was a strand of fabric. Faded teal. Glitter woven into the fibers. Eleanor's dress. Or something exactly like it. But it wasn't old. It was new. Test results showed modern polyester blends not available in 1989. Lab markings inside the hem, faint but traceable, indicated it was manufactured no more than 6 months earlier. The town's new sheriff, a younger man, skeptical of the legacy rumors, requested a forensic review. He never released the results. 2 weeks later, he submitted a transfer request and left the department. No press. No farewell. He left behind only one file on his desk. Inside was a single-page report, with only one line highlighted. Source textile exhibits 0 biological decay. Age inconsistent with historical record. Then came the rain. Unusual for October. Heavy, daily, relentless. And every time it rained, the ground around the old school seemed to darken faster than the rest of the town. As if it were absorbing more. Drinking it in. Construction crews refused to work the site. One operator claimed his excavator turned itself off. Another swore he heard the warning tone of a fire alarm, but not one from any known system. It played 4 tones, paused, and then repeated. Always 4. In town, people stopped sleeping through the night. Not from nightmares. Not from noise. From silence. Too still. Too perfect. As if something was listening for movement. More than one resident claimed to hear voices near their vents, quiet at first, then louder if they ignored them. A gas station employee said he found 4 Polaroids in the trash out back, all of them blank except for a timestamp burned into the corner. 9:41 p.m. Same time as the VHS footage. Same time the intercom system activated months before. Same time 4 kids disappeared. And then, without warning, something happened that none of them could explain, not even in whispers. All 4 missing students' medical records were locked. Hospital access restricted. Archived dental files gone. Even yearbook entries, the physical pages, in some cases were missing. Torn out. Replaced with blank gaps, as if no one wanted to commit to their faces still being part of the town's memory. But people remembered. And more than remembering, people began seeing. In passing reflections. in bus windows, in the back of group photos. Just shapes, blurry outlines. 4 of them. Always 4. One woman swore she saw Jake standing at the end of her driveway. Not him now, him then. Same boots. Same smirk. She called his name. He didn't move. Just raised a hand. Like a half wave. And then vanished when she blinked. A boy, freshman, collapsed during gym class. Said he heard Eleanor whispering from the air duct above the bleachers. Said she told him, "We've been practicing. We almost know how to come back now." The therapist who evaluated him noted no signs of trauma. But she kept the boy for observation. And later, in her report, wrote, "Patient shows no signs of hallucination. What disturbs me is not that he believes her voice was real, but that he described her tone the same way her own mother did in a 1990 interview, always soft. Always halfway between excited and scared." And then came the envelope. Delivered to the local news office. No return address. Inside, 4 items. A modern USB stick. A Polaroid photo, cracked diagonally. A crumpled piece of homework dated June 1, 1989. And a post-it with the words, "Don't forget the floor." The USB contained a single audio file. Distorted. Uneven. But you could make out a sentence repeated over and over. "We didn't leave. You just stopped looking where we were." A week later, a power station on the edge of town shorted. No injuries. But all lights within 3 blocks of the old school flickered and didn't come back on for 6 minutes. Security footage from a street camera showed a flicker in frame. A shimmer, like heat over asphalt. Then 4 shapes. Human. Paused at the fence line. Standing still. Then the image cut to black. And when the power returned, someone had spray painted the following words across the outside of the school sign. The one left half melted from the fire. Still inside. In late November 1999, the last attempt to clear the school grounds was called off. Not because of structural danger. Not because of legal concerns. But because the men in charge, the ones sent from state agencies, contractors from Springfield, even federal consultants, simply left. Quietly. Overnight. No notice. Just abandoned machinery, sealed folders, and 1 voicemail left for the county clerk. The site is layered. We're no longer confident in our assessment. Recommend no further digging. By December, frost covered the ruins. Snow followed. And in the silence of winter, St. Augustine almost pretended it was over. Almost. Then the newspaper ran a piece. Small. Tucked between ads for Christmas sales and a retirement announcement for the town librarian. The headline read, "Volunteers needed for time capsule recovery." The article said that, according to old PTA records, a time capsule had been buried behind the gym in 1989, just weeks before the students vanished. No one remembered burying it. No one remembered what was inside. Still, on January 3, 2000, 6 volunteers and 1 journalist showed up. They found the capsule less than an hour later. It was metal. Roughly the size of a shoebox. And cold, far colder than the surrounding ground. Inside. A letter addressed to whoever finds this. A mixtape labeled Party Songs, May 1989. 4 name tags. And a second envelope. Unsealed. The name tags were the ones worn at the party. The mixtape contained nothing but silence. And the letter? Typed. But the signature was in Eleanor's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means we finally got something through. Maybe not us, but enough of us. Enough sound. Enough time. They never took us. That was never it. We just opened something. And once you open it, it doesn't close the way doors do. We tried to follow our own trail back. But it keeps moving. Every year, it shifts. Every time you stop thinking about us, it turns again. But here's what you have to understand. We were never missing. We were always somewhere. And we still are. Not trapped. Not dead. Just listening. Waiting for you to ask the right question. The second envelope contained only a photo. No timestamp. No writing. Just a shot of a new classroom. Modern. Clean. 4 desks. Each perfectly arranged. Each one casting a shadow that didn't quite match the others. One longer. One bent. One almost reaching the chair beside it. And the last one, stretching out of frame. To this day, no one has been officially charged, found, or declared deceased. The St. Augustine High School property remains fenced and unbuilt. Every 5 years, someone reports a strange light at the edge of the foundation. Sometimes a voice. Sometimes music. But only ever for 8 seconds. And always, without fail, at 9:41 p.m. They never left. You just stopped standing in the right spot to hear them. And the floor, it was never the end. It was the beginning.